We are back with L.A. Marzulli, his brand new book, Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials and the End Times. L.A., we were talking about the supernatural aspect of the UFO ET phenomenon and the deception. It's Daniel chapter 10, verse 13, I think, where Daniel is communicating with the Archangel Michael, and he talks about, I think, battling the angel of Persia for 21 days, which is why he was delayed in coming to see Daniel or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's one of the few places throughout the guidebook of the supernatural. And by the way, that's what I call the Bible. Bible just means book. What it really is a guidebook of the supernatural. It's one of the rare instances where we see the supernatural world interfacing with those of us on this planet in a way that's just incredible. And so this entity, and I use the word, Elohim, and people are, trying to say the Elohim, and it's completely mistranslated in my opinion. Elohim just means supernatural entity. That's all it means. So you could say that the angel that appears, the messenger, is an Elohim. So what? So that doesn't mean it's God. It just means it's a messenger. But this angelic entity, this interdimensional entity, tells Daniel, and this is about 2,500 years ago, and he says something which is absolutely staggering in its implications. He says, first of all, seal up the words to the book, Daniel. Go your way, you're going to live a long life, but this book's going to be sealed up until the time of the end. And then he gives us what the time of the end will look like. And this is astounding when we think about it. And he basically, it's chapter 9, I believe, and he says, men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge will increase. Well, if you were to track knowledge from 2,500 years ago, it's basically flatlined till Gutenberg's printing press in the 1400s. I mean, nothing changes. Everything's pretty much the same. But Gutenberg begins the change. And then you pop into the 19th and 20th century, and it's just through the roof. Knowledge increases. As we are speaking, men and women are traveling all over the face of the earth as we are speaking. Unprecedented. Before the airplane, and people will say, well, that'll never happen. People will never fly. Man was not meant to fly. Well, as we're speaking, thousands of jets are flying all over the planet. That's, in my opinion, a fulfillment of that ancient prophetic text that we read. But he says this, their seed, Daniel 2:43, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. That's 2,500 years ago. Who are they? Just think about that. Who are they? Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave. The word cleave is the same word we get way back in the book of Genesis, the first book in the guidebook of the supernatural. And it's basically the idea of marriage. A man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. The marriage contract. Well, that's exactly what we see in the abduction phenomena. Men are taken, sperm is taken from the men, ovum from the women. Women are impregnated. They're re-abducted, usually in the first trimester by the end of the third month. In our film on cattle mutilations, we connect what's going on, what we think is happening, why the cattle mutilations are there, why they continue, why they exploded. And again, you look at 1945, 1947, 1948, the whole UFO phenomenon as we know it today takes off. Think about Linda Moulton Howe's groundbreaking work on cattle mutilations, Strange Harvest. I mean, when I got that film, I could barely watch it. Very, very upsetting, very unsettling. We connected the cattle mutilations with the breeding program. So let's go back to Daniel 2:43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but there's no marriage, which is exactly what we see written 2,500 years ago. Jesus warns us it'll be like the days of Noah before he returns. So what the heck difference, what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time in history? It's the presence of the fallen angels coming to earth and mixing their seed. Let's go back even further. And this, what I'm about to tell you, Richard, is the gateway to the guidebook of the supernatural. It's the gateway to everything. If a person understands what I'm about to say then the guidebook of a supernatural opens up. And in my book, Rungs of Disclosure, I spend a lot of time unpacking the Genesis 3:15 narrative. So you've got Adam and Eve, and they have just sided with the dragon. And something has changed in them drastically. They are terrified, which is why they're hiding. They're hiding from the Lord. The Lord shows up, pre-incarnate Jesus. The dragon's there, Adam and Eve are there, and the pre-incarnate Jesus says this. And I realize some of you are going, this sounds like religion. It's not. It's nothing religious about it. It's the most poignant verse in the entire guidebook of a supernatural, in my opinion. And Jesus points to the dragon and says this: your seed, your offspring, will be at war with the seed, offspring of the woman. The one coming from the woman will crush your head. You will bruise his heel. Richard, that's the entire biblical prophetic narrative. That's it right there. If we don't understand that, we don't understand anything else. Because 3 chapters later, you get these entities coming down, read the book of Enoch, which is incredible, and they mingle their seed, which is why the flood happens. So Jesus warns us, skip forward now, be like the days of Noah. And he just assumes, rightfully so, that everyone knows exactly what he's talking about. However, 2,000 years later, that whole scenario has become obfuscated to the point where most churches don't even understand that it's the culmination of the seed war. 3 chapters earlier, your seed will be at war. Your offspring will be at war. It's a seed war. And then when we jump thousands of years later to Daniel, their seed will mingle with the seed of men. There it is right there, screaming at us.
There's another example in Daniel about using that word cleave, and it's Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the giant statue, and each the statue representing the 4 successive kingdoms, beginning with Babylon, and then at the end, the feet of clay and iron that do not cleave. The
right.
feet of clay and iron that is that a prophecy suggesting that the final empire will be Nephilim?
Well, that's what we're looking at, in my opinion. The hybrids are modern day Nephilim. They have no soul. And again, when we look at the breeding program, and this is, go back to Dr. David Jacobs' book. You know, he has no religious dog in the hunt, as it were. He doesn't. He believes that these are extraterrestrials with a very nefarious agenda. We agree that it's a very nefarious agenda, but in my opinion, these are supernatural entities from another dimension that are popping in and out, and they are the bad guys. They're the fallen ones. So the bottom line is this, that they are walking amongst us. The seed war is happening, just like the angelic entity tells Daniel. But this all takes place 1945, 1947, 1948. That's where the UFO phenomena takes off the runway. The first set of hybrids that we hear about, according to experiences and people who were taken, like Karen Wilkinson and others, they're sickly looking, they're spindly, large black eyes, look more alien than they do human. The second set, the second generation, I would posit, are the black-eyed kids. They're stunted, they look like children, but they're not, and the eyes are black. The third generation is Al Matthews' encounter. Al encountered a hybrid entity, no doubt about it. And this woman wore these glasses, very dark glasses, almost like swimmer goggles. Al's a professional mover, and he meets this woman, and she's just come in from Kuwait, and she's going to, look at all the stuff, and they're going to talk about how they're going to move it, where they're going to move it, and all this stuff. So they're riding up on a freight elevator, Al and this woman together, alone. She leans over and she says, "Hi, Al, they're listening." And Al goes, "Who's listening?" And she goes, "The Grays. I know that you were taken, and so have I. We were supposed to meet on the ship." And this, needless to say, completely freaks Al out. And at the very end of this exchange, Al gives this woman his phone number, and she bothers him day after day, calling him up, wants to meet with him. Finally, Al succumbs, and he goes over and meets with this woman. And she's drinking wine with a friend. It's a beautiful summer night on their deck with these huge goblets of wine. And a deer fly lands on the rim of the glass, a very large fly. And Al goes, I'll get it. And she goes, no, I'll get it. And she reaches over. She doesn't grab the fly. And the fly clings to her index finger. She's not grabbing it. It just clings to her finger. And she brings it up to her mouth. And she doesn't eat it. And her tongue doesn't come out. She sucks it in from about 6 inches. How is that possible? Wow. Then she takes off the dark glasses. And she comes over. And she sits on Al's lap. So now they're face to face. She basically wants to mate with him. And Al's got a girlfriend. And this is where I call it UFO brain fog. He's not thinking clearly at this point at all. And he's not in Kansas anymore with the whole fly episode. She goes to kiss him. And as she leans forward to kiss him, he pushes her off. And as she goes back, the eyes shape shift. Okay, reptilian eyes. Then she lets out the most evil laugh you've ever heard, according to Al. And he flees the scene, goes over to a mutual friend, Gordy Tong. Gordy calls me up, and we basically talked to Al for about an hour. He's completely freaked out. 2 weeks later, he asks the Lord into his heart, which stops. Al was a lifelong abductee, taken from the time he was a kid, like 5 or 6 years old. So all this is part of his life. And when he accepts the Lord, now all of a sudden, everything stops. The abductions stop. The whole thing stops. And in our film on Abductions, we interviewed Al. We interviewed Mill Jurek, and Mill was the one with the implant. Karen Wilkinson was abducted, again, numerous times, and impregnated by them 3 different times. So the point is, the third generation can pass as human. This woman that was obviously a hybrid being can pass. But here's something I came up with. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Is that just an expression, or does it have meaning? They never get the eyes right. The dragon can't get the eyes right. That's why the big black eyes from the first generation, the black-eyed kids, and finally this woman with the reptilian eyes. They have no soul, in my opinion. The hybrids, the Nephilim, which what they are, they're modern-day Nephilim, because it's the mixing of the seed. And we know all this from the Guidebook of the Supernatural. I'm not making it up. It's there. It's not taught in the churches. In fact, if you were going to keep the scriptures away from the people, that's what you keep away. And so in the seminaries, the people, the pastors that want to become pastors, the young men that come in and want to become pastors because they're called to do this, they're not taught that. They're taught this other theory called the Sci-fi theory, which came about in the 3rd and 4th centuries, which completely negates Genesis 3:15, which we talked about. And they say, well, it's really not the fallen angels. It's the godly line of Seth and the hoochie mamas of Cain, but that's not what the scripture says.
NASA is hiring priests, preparing for contact.
Yeah, when I saw that, I about fell out of my chair. So first of all, why would they do this? And the reason for it is because they realize that on the planet, 8 billion people, the Catholic religion is the largest religion on the planet, 1.2 billion, and growing. And so they're hiring priests to try to get themselves, how do we bring this to the American people? How do we count this? What are we looking at? Is it supernatural? Are these really, extraterrestrials from some other planet someplace? How does religion, the Catholic religion, how does Christianity dovetail to this? And let me just tell you this, that in the Guidebook of a Supernatural, there's prophecy talking about a one-world religious system and a one-world government. Now, today, as we're speaking, there are those who talk about the New World Order, the global government, the whole deal. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up, but you go back 200 years and no one's talking about that at all. That's just a pipe dream. And when you would read the book of Revelation, you would go, well, that's never going to happen. A one-world religion and a one-world government system, that's never going to happen. Yeah, well, whoever wrote that is dreaming, but they're not dreaming. And what was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding even as we speak, which is just mind-boggling when you think about it. We're in the window of time where they're talking about a global government. And it begs the question, how do we get there? And that's why NASA is hiring clergy, priests, whatever. I mean, I'm raising my hand. You guys should talk to me. You got to remember that what was written thousands of years ago, in my opinion, is coming to pass. And how do you get a one-world religious system, a one-world global government? And as I said before the break, you go back a couple hundred years ago, and this was all a pipe dream. That's never going to happen, right? Never going to happen. We're in a window of time where it could happen very, very quickly. And this goes back to our very first hour. We were talking about the commercial on Super Bowl, Hello Down There, when a global event, which is going to trigger the revealing of the so-called extraterrestrial presence. The neo-Darwinists, Darwinism tells us that over millions and billions of years, everything just slowly evolved. Okay, great. The neo-Darwinists are looking at this with the discovery of DNA. They realize that, wait a minute, this thing is a very complex code. It just didn't happen by itself. Somebody, somewhere, created this thing. And that's a 3-hour discussion. So they're looking to panspermia. The neo-Darwinists looking to the stars, essentially. Well, we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. This is what the Ancient Alien series promulgates every Friday. But wait, there's another paradigm other than ancient astronauts. Something happened here. There's no doubt. We agree. Go to places like Sacsayhuaman or the Great Circle Mound or the Octagon Mound in Ohio or Gilgal-Raphaim in Israel or Menga in Spain or just, Stonehenge, England or Stonehenge here in America. Something's going on here. You're looking at, in my opinion, fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. And Ancient Aliens gets it right. They realize, you can call them whatever you want. Ancient astronauts, I call them fallen angelic beings. The technology goes beyond anything we have today. You go down to Sacsayhuaman and you look at that wall, the walls that are there, the stonework, and it's mind-boggling. Where did that come from? And why is it that it appears in a certain window of time and then it just disappears? And no one has ever recreated it. The docents will tell us, the Inca were master stone builders. Well, take the L.A. Marzulli challenge. If they only have copper chisels, you can't cut andesite stone with copper chisels. And how do you move stones that weigh 20, 30, 80 tons? How do you do that? There's no beast of burden. And this is the work of Graham Hancock. I mean, he got there before I got there. And Hancock wrote about this, and other people have written about this before Graham Hancock. So it's not like he discovered it. It's been there. It's just sitting there for thousands of years. When the conquistadors came and said, who did this? The Incas just said, we don't know what was here when we got here. Richard, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the same exact story. No matter where I go on the planet. Well, we don't know who built this. It was here before we got here.
Let's bring it up to, again, modern times as we climb the rungs of disclosure, the name of the book. In the 9th rung, Congress holding its first UFO discussion in 50 years. What is how significant is it, Congress finally discussing UFOs? What do you think this indicates about the future of UFO disclosure?
There are people like Congressman Burkett and others, Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, to name a few. They're looking. They're trying to figure out what this is. But it's always the same players who are recycled in and around. In other words, no one contacts me to hear my side of the story ever, which is fine, I suppose. But it's the same military people or ex-military people or people that have ties to the Vatican. So the fact that Congress, for the first time, in 50 years, is talking about this, and the reason why they are is because the whistleblowers have come forward. Commander David Fravor, David Grush, and others have come forward. Luis Elizondo, for crying out loud, Christopher Mellon. They've all come. By the way, I'm reading Eminent by Luis Elizondo, and he refers to the Nephilim. He refers back to the Book of Enoch. So, Lou Elizondo knows some of this stuff. I mean, I've sat down with Nick Pope and interviewed him. So Congress knows something is going on. Here's the deal, Richard. Who's got the power to deliberately obfuscate it from the American people? There's a clip that I got from Fox News where Tim Burkett comes out of this closed meeting and basically said, you know, it's a big nothing burger. We got no information, nothing. I mean, whoever controls the narrative, it's like under lock and key, completely under lock and key. So you can't even find out what really happened at Roswell. I mean, everything it's just locked up. And we're not, the American people, the people of the world have a right to know. I mean, we do. We have a right to know what's going on. But circling back, I think it terrifies the powers that be in this country, and they don't know how to deal with it, which goes back into an earlier discussion we had, NASA hiring priests. You know, why are they doing that? Because they're trying to get their heads around how, you know, when disclosure happens, it's going to change everything. How do we deal with this? Congress, our elected officials, are trying to penetrate, if I can use the word, the iron curtain of the deep state, because that's what it is. And they can't get to it. They can't get any information at all.
Let's talk about the concept of UFO interference syndrome. What is UFO interference syndrome?
People that are taken and abducted, Karen Wilkinson is a living example of that. People who are around these things, all sorts of medical issues can happen, and they're not good. And that begs the question, if these entities are so smart and so brilliant that they can travel millions of miles from some faraway planet, I'll circle back to what I said in the very beginning. Why not give us the cure to cancer? You know, if they know that exposure to the craft over a prolonged period of time is going to act in a very deleterious way to the abductee, they don't care. And that speaks volumes to me. They're not friendly ETs from, you know, Zeta Reticuli or Epsilon Eridani. They have a very nefarious agenda. And, you know, it gets back into Karen Wilkinson. She's a walking testimony of what it's like to be exposed to this in a prolonged period of time and the effects it has medically on your body. And it's not good.
Is it possible the people that are having positive experiences with an alien abduction, the people who claim that they've been healed, they're having an angelic encounter as well, but these are not the fallen angels. These are, you know, God's messengers.
Well, it's a very complex mix. And I've sat down with Preston Dennett. The other one is the head of Exopolitics Portugal, Francisco Carrera. And I sit down with both of these guys, and we disagree. I mean, they believe that they're extraterrestrials. I believe that they're interdimensional with a very nefarious agenda. These entities have the ability to manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy us. They just do, completely. If you're going to gain the trust of someone, you know, you don't appear as some nefarious entity. You appear as an angel of light. Think about this. The whole abduction phenomenon, the whole hybrid phenomenon starts right after Israel becomes a nation. Why? Because Israel is the prophetic time clock for the end times. People, you can believe that, call me crazy, but it's right there.
You mentioned Dr. David Jacobs, and he was part of that famous Roper poll. You know, how many people have been abducted? And I think when you do the math, it's probably, tens of millions of people. Is Satan trying to raise an army? Is that what that's about? An army for the final battle of good versus evil?
Satan's building an army. He's outnumbered 2-1. And this is what we're up against. You know, you can poo-poo it all you want. You can say it's not there. But the Guidebook of the Supernatural is the only book on the planet that calls out these events with great specificity. Surely that has to count for something. I mean, it's all right there. Jesus warns us that men and women will faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. Why would he say that? Why would Jesus say it'll be like the days of Noah when I return? Why would he point back to the days of Noah, the Nephilim? And 2,000 years ago, everybody knew what he was talking about. Today, in seminary, most people have no idea what he's talking about because everything's been deliberately obfuscated by whoever. So most pastors that come out of seminary have no idea about the seed war. That's why I'm so adamant. That's why I've written all these books and produced all these films. That's why I'm talking, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning about all this, because it's all ties back to the biblical prophetic narrative, i.e., the guidebook of a supernatural. It's the only book on the planet that calls all this stuff out with great specificity. But you've got to connect the dots.
Going back to that Roper poll and how many millions of people have been abducted, again, if you do the math, doesn't it stand to reason then, L.A., that many of us may have Nephilim blood in us? And if that is true, through no fault of our own, let's say, are we capable of being saved? If we have a drop of blood, of Nephilim blood, does that mean that we have no soul?
I get what you're saying. The hybrids, the true hybrid entities, have no soul. Most people, including many experiences, are human beings, and they have a soul. This is a whole different deal. And the Nephilim were wiped out. Now, this is where it gets into our work on the Giant of Kandahar and things like that. We don't know how old that Giant of Kandahar was. Was he 3,000 years old? It's possible. Absolutely possible. Goliath was a Nephilim, 10, 12 feet tall. The Nephilim came over here. The Native Americans talk about it. First Nation people talk about it. The red-haired, cannibalistic, six-fingered, double rows of teeth giants that roam the Americas. They're no longer here. They're no longer walking amongst us. So we got to be really careful. You know, when you say one drop of Nephilim blood, the hybrids are a completely different story. The hybrids are and Karen Wilkinson, I point back to her. She even says it. It's like they're looking to get a soul because they can't get one, because they are soulless. This is why the God of the Bible says destroy them, because they're not made in the image and likeness of God. They're not human as we know it. And it's a very slippery slope. It's a very dangerous game. Well, maybe he's a Nephilim. We're not saying that. It's you know what I'm saying? It's a whole different deal. Yeah. But when they show up, like the woman with the dark sunglasses, in my opinion, she is a modern-day Nephilim. She's not human. She's soulless.
What do you envision as the end game here, humanity's relationship with these so-called ETs, and how, more importantly, perhaps, how do we prepare for it?
There's going to be an event on the planet which is going to create the greatest collective fear that humanity has ever experienced together. And what I'm speaking about is a nuclear event. Because you get a nuke going off today. It's not 45 with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is their trigger. They're waiting for this. And because we are wired up via the internet and the satellite network, humanity will experience this together. We'll see it. We'll be terrified. Oh my gosh, are we next? Are they going to blow the whole planet up? And that's when they show up. And when they show up, they will tell us that they created all life on this earth. They genetically manipulated early man. They've started the world civilizations and the world religions. Now at this critical juncture, they are back to usher mankind into a golden age. And I heard this 50 years ago, before I was a Christian. And this is what I believe is the last rung on the ladder of disclosure, when they reveal themselves. And no government can stop them. It'll be exactly like that as predictive programming. They're getting us ready. They know it's going to happen. But when they show up, everything changes. This is how you fulfill the prophecies found in the book of Revelation that speak of a one-world government and a one-world religious system. This is how you do it. Because when they show up, it's a mega lever. Everything changes. Everything changes, and does so instantaneously.
L.A., thank you.
Richard, my pleasure.